Good evening, and welcome to Get Sleepy. I'm Thomas. In this episode, we'll be taking a tranquil journey through Italy by train. It's a compilation of 5 episodes from various parts of the country, and I really hope you enjoy it. So, sit back and relax in our cozy train carriage. Listen to the rumble of the wheels on the tracks, and I'll tell you about our itinerary. We'll be making several stops over a few days to enjoy some of Italy's most beloved places. Our first stop is in the north of the country, the vibrant lakeside town of Limone Salgada. From there, we'll hop back on the train and head to Florence, and then we'll explore the surrounding Tuscan countryside before boarding a train to Rome to enjoy the blue hour in the ancient city. For our last stop, we'll head to the coast, where you can spend the last hours of the evening on a quiet private terrace overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. After all that travel, I'm sure you'll be ready for a good night's rest, if you don't fall asleep before then. As I think you'll find, travelling by way of the Dreamland train is perhaps the best way to see the world. It looks like we're arriving in Limone now, so let's take a nice deep breath in and let it out, feeling your body melt into the bed, releasing all of your stress from the day. There's nothing left to do but enjoy this relaxing trip through one of the world's most beautiful countries. Now that we've reached the station, let's disembark the train and begin our journey. Nestled in the upper western corner of Lake Garda, Limone Salgada boasts some of the most alluring scenery in northern Italy. Many tourists flock here every summer to explore the town and its surroundings, and it's clear to see why. Quaint, narrow streets, attractive architecture and housing with a medieval look that's been preserved throughout generations. A splendour of restaurants, bars and cafes that serve fresh Italian food and coffee. And stunning panoramic scenery of the lake and the mountains that overlook it. There is plenty of serenity to be found here. Until 1932, there was no road linking Limone to other parts of the lake's circumference. This meant that the town was somewhat cut off and isolated, with the only method of transport to leave or arrive being by boat. Interestingly, the average life expectancy of native residents here is notably high. A remarkable number of people have lived to be over 100 years old. This trait has been accredited to the people here developing a unique protein in their bodies throughout centuries of isolation. The protein is said to help protect the heart and arteries from cardiovascular problems. Hence the notably high ratio of centenarians. Nowadays, many visitors arrive by road, navigating through winding country lanes and bustling town centres. Unique tunnels had to be carved through the mountains to link the roads together. They're lined with open arches to the side facing the lake, letting in natural light to guide drivers during the daytime. The route by car offers some stunning sights. However, today you will be arriving just as so many have for centuries before. Cruising on the calm and clear water of Lake Garda, you stand on the upper deck of a small passenger ferry. The water below is a navy blue colour, darkened further in places by the shadows of towering, tree-covered mountains. The lake is the largest in Italy, expanding an area that exceeds 350 square kilometres. Although, at your current orientation, it's narrow enough that you can enjoy a clear view of both sides. The morning sun is beaming through light dustings of fluffy white clouds. A soft breeze cools your skin as you lean one arm on a polished silver railing. Your other hand is occupied with keeping your hat firmly secured to your head. This keeps your eyes shaded from sunlight, allowing you to see the spectacle all around. There are many varieties of vessels on the lake. Small rowing boats and pedalos, medium-sized speedboats with lavish interiors and stylish bows at the front, and about half a dozen passenger ferries, transporting tourists from place to place. There are smiling faces all round, even the occasional cries of ciao from those passing nearby. It seems that everybody is enjoying their share of paradise on this lake. As the boat draws closer to the harbour, the townscape of Limone becomes more and more vivid. You see the orange-tiled rooftops of houses and buildings. On the promenade, dozens of palm trees and vibrant, colourful flowers line the banks. Faded canopies stretch out over the restaurants that look onto the water. A church bell tower rises above its counterparts. Its weathered, pale green roof is dome-shaped, with a point at the top elevating a small metal crucifix. The charm of this compact town is further enhanced by the extraordinary backdrop of huge rocky cliffs. Climbing steep into the sky with a rumpled terrain, the mountains have a hazy appearance, almost like they aren't even real. As you look ahead, nearing your destination, you take in a nice, deep breath. And as you release the air back out, you feel the warmth of the sun caressing your shoulders. Your muscles are free of tension as you contemplate the idyllic day to come. A few minutes later, the ferry glides into the harbour and pulls in beside a wooden dock. You step off and stroll onto a concrete pavement. All along this stretch of the promenade, beautiful flower arrangements are dotted through the centre of the wide pedestrian walkway. They are layered in a unique cylindrical shape, rising about 8 feet off the ground. Each one looks like a broad column, submerged with a vast array of bright blooms. You spotted the colourful flowers from afar on the lake, and they're even prettier up close. Their sweet, floral scents swirl through the air as you pass them by. Ahead of you, there is a row of shops selling various products. Most notably, they all have beach-themed items outside. You weren't aware of it before, but just beyond the promenade lies a small, sandy beach. A handful of people are already settled here, with towels laid out, soaking up the morning sun. You decide to take a stroll down to the water whilst it's still fairly quiet. You slip off your sandals as you step down onto the beach. The grains of light golden sand feel warm and soft between your toes. They smother your feet and kick up behind you on each step toward the water. Your ears notice the softest sound of waves on the shore that you can ever remember hearing. In comparison to an ocean, the movement of the lake water is minimal. As you reach the lake, you step into the shallow dregs of the small waves. The water is warmer than you expected, but still cool enough that you only let it rise as high as your ankles. It's just the right level to refresh your entire body and spirit. You stand for a while, looking out across Lake Garda. This is one of the narrowest parts of the entire lake, meaning the eastern side is well within view. Most of the opposite scenery is made up of towering mountains covered in dense green forestry. As you glance at the surface of the lake, you can see glimmers of their reflection where the water is particularly calm. It feels like the encompassing mountains are protecting the beauty within, and perhaps even creating a hiding place for the expanse of water. Several people are enjoying a swim a little further out from the shore. To your left, a man and woman who you expect are locals stride into the lake and dive under without any hesitation. You're quite impressed by their disregard for the gelidity of the water. A lot of people would prefer the slow and steady approach, although that can be quite uncomfortable in its own right. With your ankles feeling comfortably acclimatized to the water, you gaze back across the lake. Just beyond the group of swimmers, you spot somebody floating upright on top of the lake's surface. You squint your eyes to focus in on the young man. He's pushing himself along with a paddle in his hands. Below his feet is a long, thin board. Following closely behind him are 3 more paddleboarders. They don't seem quite as competent as their leader though. One is cautiously propped on their knees, lowering their centre of gravity. Meanwhile, behind them, the other 2 participants are struggling to keep their balance at all. They lean forwards and backwards in an amusing motion akin to a rocking horse, each one waving an arm around wildly to try and stay upright. The moment one seems to steady themselves, the other falls in. You can't help but chuckle as you watch the paddleboarders trying desperately to stay upright. The leader of the group makes it look remarkably easy. He even helps the others get back on their boards, stretching out his paddle for them to use as leverage, whilst flawlessly maintaining his own footing. You smile and close your eyes, leaning your head back gently to feel the sun on your face. A faint breeze rustles your clothing as you listen to the relaxing sounds of the lake. You could spend many hours here, enjoying the sun on the sandy beach. Nonetheless, you have plenty of exploring to do. You open your eyes and wander back over the dry sand. As you climb the steps back up to the promenade, you brush off your feet and slip your sandals back on. The harbour winds around the lake in a semicircle shape. From here, you can see the restaurants dotted all around the promenade. You stroll along the front and peruse the options for your lunch in an hour or two. Already, there are delectable smells permeating the air. Fresh aromas of baked pizza dough, seafood, herbs, and garlic fill your nostrils. You sense your belly quietly rumbling as you read the restaurant menus placed on lecterns all along the waterfront. Before you take a break for lunch, however, there is plenty more to discover in the rest of the town. Numerous roads and pathways branch off from the piazza. You wander past a few before turning left onto a quiet, shaded path. On either side, sun-trapped balconies overlook you, sporting yet more vibrant flowers and plants. Each home has a large, dark brown medieval door, heavy and robust. The medieval style has been preserved on the exterior of the majority of houses and buildings. Ahead are a small flight of concrete steps that lead you further from the busy promenade. You notice something special about the street signs and the plaques indicating house numbers. Every one of them has a consistent theme. A white tile base with sky blue writing and the most endearing borders of yellow lemons. They're painted to look like they are hanging from branches around the perimeter of each tile. It is clear that the proud tradition of lemon growing is ingrained in the culture and design of the town. The rustic streets are peaceful, and you savour the opportunity to dwindle amongst the chalky-coloured houses. Their exquisite features are fascinating, and many have delightful scatterings of purple bougainvillea climbing the walls and terraces. Some cul-de-sacs are so picturesque that you cannot resist snapping artistic photos to capture the memories. As you continue further up the slopes of the town's narrow roads, you catch a scent of fresh lemon. You wonder where the citric aroma is coming from. To your right is a tall stone wall with a castle-like appearance to its structure. As you step back and try and get a glimpse of the other side, your eyes are met by something unusual. Rows of beige stone pillars stand tall in a precise formation that ascends the sloping hillside. They each support slender wooden beams that stretch from pillar to pillar. You take your camera out to see if you can get a better look, stretching your arm up high and snapping photos with untidy precision. A passerby notices your efforts. She approaches you with a friendly smile. "Would you like to see the lemon trees?" she asks. It clicks in your mind. This is one of the region's lemon houses that you've heard about. The kind lady shows you to a gated opening on the opposite wall. Indeed, this is the castle of Limone. It was restored by the council in recent decades to once again house lemon trees inside. As you peer through the metal gate, you see row upon row of bountiful lemon trees. They're planted on several levels of flat turf, separated by landscape stretches of low walls. They boast plush, leafy green branches and hundreds of plump, ripening zesty lemons. This is what you could smell in the nearby streets. The lady, who has lived in Limone for most of her life, explains the structure that you could see over the wall. Years ago, the cultivation of lemons was crucial to many people living beside Lake Garda. It was an integral part of maintaining the economy for their region. Therefore, in the winter months, when the weather became cold and rain or snow often fell, the gardeners needed to protect their yields. This led to the ingenious design of the lemon houses. The pillars and beams were constructed to support protective wooden struts that could easily be slotted in to cover the trees during the harsher weather. As with many others in the area, the uncovered structure may look like an unfinished greenhouse or possibly an old, derelict factory. But the intentional design, unique to this region, provided multiple generations of locals with abundant lemon crops. Nowadays, the castle of Limone doesn't use the temporary covers. Yet, in some of the other preserved lemon houses around the lake, the structures remain in full working use all year round. Your friendly volunteer guide explains that the lemons have been a key food and drink ingredient for a long time in the area. Marmalade, juices, sorbets and cakes all benefit from the fresh citrus fruit. But perhaps most famous of all is the popular liqueur drink, limoncello. The lady tells you that when you visit Limone, it is customary that you try the famous liqueur. You promise to do just that when you enjoy a spot of lunch by the lake. With that, you thank the kind woman for taking time to share her wisdom with you. She smiles and waves as she meanders up the steep path toward her home. Meanwhile, you have worked up quite the appetite. It's time to wander back down to the harbour and find a place to eat. On your descent toward the waterfront, you pass the church of Saint Benedetto. This is the building with the majestic bell tower that you could see from the ferry. A plaque outside is engraved with the year 1691, dating back to when the church was built. You look up and see a large clock face on the upper section of the tower. The time is approaching 1:30 p.m. You wonder if the bell might ring at 1/2 the hour, reminding the townspeople of the time. You decide to stand for a couple of minutes, surveying the impressive 17th century building. Indeed, when the minute hand reaches the half-hour mark, a metallic chime strikes and echoes through Limone. Though nowadays most people have their own clocks, watches or devices to tell the time, it's wonderful that the church bell is still in full use. The early afternoon sun is now at the peak of its daily journey over this part of the world. You mosey back through the shaded lanes, passing shop windows and small bakeries along the way. Eventually, you see a clearing through some buildings ahead. The gleaming sunlight illuminates the lake's gentle, wavy surface. You're not far from the harbour now. On a few buildings and terraces, residents have decorated their homes by hanging small bunches of lemons on railings and window ledges. The vibrant yellows stand out against the pale whites and greys of the exterior walls. You feel a great sense of admiration for the people of Limone. They seem to take great pride in both the history and the aesthetics of their neighbourhood. This habitual love for their hometown feels like a rare thing in this day and age. It makes for such a safe and welcoming atmosphere. Even more impressive is how the people have integrated the boom of tourism into their community, all without sacrificing the ancestral features that convey such charm and character. Now you step back out onto the busier promenade. The cafes and gelaterias are abuzz with cheerful visitors. Earlier, you saw a row of restaurants that were particularly appealing. Their outdoor seating areas extended right out onto the water's edge, promising spectacular views of Lake Garda. You make your way there and arrive at a perfect time. You can see that one restaurant has a table spare on its outermost row of seating. A waiter comes to greet you and happily shows you to the table you requested. He hands you the lunch menu and places some fresh ciabatta bread in front of you. To accompany this, a small dish of extra virgin olive oil and balsamic vinegar. A cool bottle of mineral water is also on the table. You twist open the sealed cap and pour yourself a refreshing glass. The water is soothing and cool, swiftly quenching your thirst. The energy you expended exploring all of the sloped streets has left you feeling quite peckish. Therefore, the ciabatta is a welcome appetizer while you browse the menu. You dip it into the olive oil and vinegar, soaking the liquid into the fluffy dough. Nibbling on the crusty bread, you try to decide which delicious option to pick for your main course. A couple on the table next to you are enjoying some fresh pasta. It looks amazing, you think, your heart now set on the pasta dishes. There are so many choices: spaghetti bolognese, vegetable lasagna, seafood linguine, penne arrabbiata, and plenty more. You eventually settle on your favourite, and the waiter takes your order. There is another passenger ferry pulling into the dock at the opposite side of the harbour. You watch as excited visitors disembark the boat and saunter off in various directions. The beach has become busier since the morning. Some people are lazily sunbathing. Others are enjoying a dip in the shallow parts of the lake. No sign of the paddleboarders this time though. Lots of visitors are sitting on benches or walls around the promenade, indulging in ice creams and sweet treats. If there is room left after lunch, you may even treat yourself to some delicious Italian gelato. You take your time to sit and enjoy your lunch beside the glorious view. The sun glistens off the water. As boats cruise along, they create gentle ripples in their wake, which flicker and flash in the sunlight. Under the shade of the restaurant's canopy, you enjoy the warm afternoon air. The sounds of water kicking up on the rocks below is like a natural lullaby, evoking calm and tranquility. When you finish your scrumptious meal, the waiter asks if there's anything else you would like. You remember the lady's recommendation by the Lemon House. Try the limoncello. The waiter happily obliges and brings you a small glass of the region's famous drink. As you take your first sip, the flavour is as expected, sharp and citrusy, but there's a pleasant sweetness too. The liquid feels warming on your throat and cleansing on your tongue. You lean back in your chair, enjoying the radiant, relaxing lake view. You draw a deep breath in and release a long, calming breath back out. Your feeling toward this moment is one of gratitude and contentment. You can't think of anywhere you'd rather be. Watching the afternoon go by on Lake Garda, drifting into a state of peace and serenity. What a miraculous place. It's a shame we can't stay longer, but we have plenty more to see and enjoy. So let's catch our next ride on the Dreamland train to Florence. While we travel, let me tell you a little about it. This small city was once a major world power and the centre of a cultural revolution, the Renaissance. As you explore the streets and discover the art art and architecture, you'll understand what makes Florence so special and historic. We're just pulling into Florence now. Amazing how quickly we can travel in the world of dreams, isn't it? Let's disembark our cozy carriage and head just down the street. There's a special place I want to show you first. You walk slowly through the entrance of the art gallery, your footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Although you're excited to enter the next room, you take your time, savoring the sense of anticipation. In just a moment, you'll be standing face to face with an icon. You're visiting the Accademia Gallery, located in the historic centre of Florence. This gallery is home to the most famous statue in the world, Michelangelo's David. As you enter a long hallway lined with sculptures and paintings, you catch your first glimpse. The enormous statue is right at the end of the hall, standing on a plinth. Michelangelo's masterpiece depicts the biblical hero David. He's a muscular young man, standing tall and looking to the side with an intense expression on his face. In one hand, David holds a slingshot. He's preparing for his battle with the giant Goliath. You walk closer, keen to admire the artwork in more detail. David is so famous that he feels strangely familiar. You've seen his image everywhere, on posters, in books, and on countless souvenirs. It feels surreal to see him in person, a little like meeting a celebrity. But although you feel like you know the statue, nothing compares to seeing it in person. David is larger than life. He stands 17 feet tall, towering over the visitors who stand below him. As you join the crowd, you find yourself comparing the experience to a concert. David is on a stage with his admiring fans gazing up at him. Michelangelo's magnificent sculpture is so powerful and so full of energy. You can't help but think of David as a person rather than an artwork. It's easy to imagine him coming to life, stepping down from his pedestal. Of course, David is an idealized representation of the human form. His incredible height and perfect physique aren't exactly realistic, and certain details are exaggerated or out of proportion. Perhaps this was intentional, to make them more visible for people viewing the statue from the ground. Yet, despite this, there's something remarkably real about David. You notice the soft curves of his muscles and the detailed outlines of the veins on his hand. Then there's his face, full of expression and emotion, With his furrowed brow and intense gaze, he seems so human. How incredible, you think, that David was created from a single block of marble. Michelangelo began work on David in the year 1501, when he was just 26 years old. At the time, city officials were wondering what to do with a gigantic slab of poor quality marble. A couple of artists had already tried to turn it into a sculpture without success. The young Michelangelo had already created other sculptures in his native Florence. He'd also carved the famous statue of Jesus lying in Mary's lap, which is now on display in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. But sculpting David was his greatest challenge yet, and ended up as one of his most noteworthy achievements. He spent 3 years working on this sculpture, chipping away at the rough block of marble. According to your guidebook, there's a beautiful quote attributed to Michelangelo. In a letter, the artist wrote something along these lines: "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set it free." As you continue to admire the statue, walking around it so you can appreciate every detail, you reflect on this idea, setting free the angel in the marble. It's such a beautiful concept, and it goes beyond this specific statue. There's something profound about the idea of the artist's role, setting free their creation. The artwork is then out there in the world, free to be discovered by anyone and everyone. The city of Florence is full of beautiful creations like David, just waiting to be discovered. There's more to see in the Accademia too, including some other marble statues by Michelangelo, known as the prisoners. The figures seem to push their way out of the stone, seeking to free themselves. You spend some more time exploring the gallery, admiring other Renaissance artworks, but after a while, you decide it's time to move on. Masterpieces like these are best enjoyed a bit at a time. You remember reading about an unusual phenomenon in Florence. While visiting the sites, the French author Stendhal was so overcome with emotion that he started to feel faint. Ever since, the term Stendhal syndrome has been used to describe the intense feelings that some visitors experience in Florence. It's easy to feel a little overwhelmed here. This small city has so much history and amazing art and architecture everywhere you look. So it's best to take it slow, absorbing one thing at a time. Perhaps you'll go to another gallery tomorrow. But for now, you're ready to explore the city streets, wandering aimlessly through the historic centre. Outside, it's a warm, sunny afternoon. but there's a pleasant breeze in the air, carrying the scent of jasmine and tantalizing smells from nearby restaurants. Florence feels relaxed and laid back. It's more like a quiet town than a bustling city, with most people getting around on foot or by bike, and no one's rushing. People walk slowly here, taking their time so they can appreciate the beauty all around them. You find yourself slowing down too, keeping pace with the city. As you stroll down a narrow street, you admire the elegance of the old buildings, which are mostly 3 or 4 stories high. Most are painted similar shades of pale yellow, cream, or grey, while the wooden shutters on the windows are brown or dark green. Everything matches beautifully, and the colour scheme helps to create a sense of tranquility and flow. One building merges seamlessly into the next, and the winding streets flow on and on. During your walk, you catch occasional glimpses of the Duomo, the gigantic dome of the cathedral, which stands in the heart of Florence. Every now and then, the dome appears at the end of a street, like some vast, magical apparition. Part of you is tempted to walk towards it, to admire this majestic building up close. But you also like the idea of leaving it for now. You'll save it for later, as a kind of treat. Right now, you're happy to just wander, without stopping to look at anything in particular. You're absorbing it all, meandering through the shady streets. Everywhere you go, there's a historic building or statue, or a sign commemorating some famous event or person. It's like walking through an open-air museum. You remember reading that in medieval times, Florence was one of the most important financial centres in Europe. The city's connection to the Mediterranean Sea through the Arno River facilitated international trade. Florence was famous worldwide for its wool and luxury textiles, and busy merchants made their fortune. At around this time, in the 14th century, Florence became the centre of the Renaissance, a word that means rebirth. The Renaissance was a cultural movement with innovation in art, science, philosophy, and many other fields. Great thinkers took inspiration from the past, such as the culture of ancient Greece. But intellectuals were also looking forward, making exciting new discoveries, and finding new ways of thinking. It was a time of extraordinary innovation, and Florence was at the centre of it all. It was the home to the astronomer Galileo, whose discoveries were the foundation for modern science. The great artist and scientist Leonardo da Vinci also lived in this storied place. In fact, many of the great artists of all time worked in Florence in roughly the same period, including Michelangelo and Botticelli. It's amazing, you think, just how many important people lived and worked in this city. Was it just a coincidence, or was there something special about Florence? An answer to this question arrives just a moment later in the form of a building. You're standing in a square facing a grand, castle-like structure, its distinctive bell tower adorned with a clock. This is Palazzo Vecchio, a name which translates as Old Palace. Even by Florence standards, it's old, as it dates back to the 13th century. This building was originally one of the residences of the Medici family. The Medici were a banking dynasty. For generations, they were one of the most powerful, rich, and influential families in Europe. There are many buildings in Florence associated with the Medici, but Palazzo Vecchio is one of the most striking. For a moment, you just stand there, gazing up at the imposing brick facade. Then you turn to your guidebook to learn more about the family who once lived here. One of the most interesting aspects of the Medici is their cultural influence. Due to their immense wealth, they were able to commission works from some of the most brilliant artists of the time, including Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Raphael. The Medici were also the patrons of Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo, and the architect Brunelleschi, who built the dome of the cathedral in Florence. The support of this powerful family is an intriguing common denominator. But of course, it can't be quite that simple. In Renaissance Florence, so many different factors came together, creating a vibrant culture and an intellectual atmosphere that allowed talented people to flourish. You put away your guidebook and continue to stroll through the square, enjoying the warmth of the sun on your skin. This part of the city has such a rich history. In this moment, you're walking in the footsteps of some of the most important and influential people to have ever lived. Yet at the same time, this square is just like any other Italian piazza. There are locals walking their dogs, children playing, and couples strolling hand in hand. In the middle of this historical location, people go about their everyday lives. The contrast is strange in a way, but it also makes the city's history feel less distant and more accessible. You can imagine a sense of continuity throughout the centuries. When you catch a sight of a smartly dressed Italian family, you imagine for a moment They might be descendants of the Medici, or perhaps the connection between past and present exists in another form, not through family, but through cultural influence. As people continue to visit Florence, finding inspiration in the beautiful art and architecture, the spirit of the Renaissance city lives on. You wander into the shade of a nearby street, where you spot a group of friends enjoying ice cream. Suddenly, you find that you also have a craving for something sweet. And a little further along, on the corner, you come across a gelato shop. There's a whole rainbow of flavors on display. Strawberry, mandarin, lemon, kiwi, blueberry. You're tempted by the chocolatey flavors too, but on this warm afternoon, you feel like something light and fruity. So, you get a cone with 2 large scoops of creamy lemon gelato. The woman hands you the cone with a smile, explaining that it's made with some of the best lemons in Italy. They're grown in the south, on the Amalfi Coast. As you eat the gelato, you close your eyes for a moment, savoring the delicious, zesty flavor. The cool intensity of the citrus taste seems to transport you away from the city to a sunny lemon grove. You can imagine endless rows of lemon trees in a garden high above the sea. The light blue of the cloudless sky merges beautifully into the dazzling sapphire of the ocean. When you open your eyes, the daydream fades, but this sense of peace stays with you as you continue to eat. It's the taste of summer, you think. Another time, you'll have to venture further south in Italy and visit the place where the lemons grow. The gelato is wonderfully refreshing, and the subtle sweetness gives you a light energy boost. Although you're feeling a bit tired, you're happy to walk on, seeing more of this beautiful city. Soon you find yourself walking down a street with a difference. At first, it seems like an ordinary street, lined with shops on both sides. But when you look into a shop, you can see right through the window on the other side of the building. Beyond, there's a view of the sky and a distant hill crowned with cypress trees. This street is actually a footbridge, the oldest in Florence. Ponte Vecchio crosses the Arno River. Ever since its construction in medieval times, the bridge has been a shopping district. Originally, there were all kinds of shops here, including butchers and fishmongers. But in the 16th century, a Medici duke objected to the marketplace atmosphere. preferring something a little more refined, he ordered that all the shops be replaced with goldsmiths and jewelers. And it's been that way ever since. Today, as you walk across the bridge, you notice that every window is full of glittering gold, rings, bracelets, and necklaces. The Medici family also made another significant change to Ponte Vecchio. Back when the bridge was still home to butchers and fishmongers, the Medici ordered the construction of a covered walkway right above the shops. It's known as the Vasari Corridor. This corridor gave the Grand Duke easy access between two buildings. From his palace, he could walk directly to the offices on the other side of the river. That way, he didn't have to mingle with the crowds on the bridge or smell the shops. These days, the Duke's palace and offices are both open to the public. The offices, or uffizi, were converted into the famous art gallery of the same name. According to your guidebook, the Duke's Corridor is currently closed to the public, but it's due to reopen soon. As you stand on the bridge, you look up above the shops and notice the row of small windows on the top story. This must be the corridor. You imagine the Duke walking along here on his way to work, enjoying the luxurious privacy of his very own passageway. Although you can't visit the corridor right now, you can enjoy a different kind of luxury. Walking past the jewelry shops, you reach the middle of the bridge, where there's an open space. Here, you can walk right to the edge and admire the view of the river. Standing on the low stone wall, you let your gaze slowly drift. To the left of the river, you can see an elegant old building, the Uffizi Gallery. The walls seem to glow gold in the afternoon sunlight. You notice the line of small windows along the side and wonder if this is the continuation of the private corridor. Then you find yourself daydreaming about other secret rooms and mysterious windows. There must be so many magical, hidden places in a city like this. The view from the bridge is so perfect, it resembles a well-composed painting. In the middle, there's the tranquil, shimmering river which mirrors the sky. Along both banks, there are rows of beautiful old buildings in shades of cream, gold, and pale orange. And in the distance, you can see another bridge, an ancient tower, and a hill that rises gently. All along the top are tall, thin cypress trees. There's a part of you that longs to go there, to stand on that distant hill and see Florence from another perspective. But as you daydream about the journey, picturing yourself climbing the hill, you realize just how tired you are. After a long day of walking and sightseeing, you're ready to sit down and rest for a while. Fortunately, you're staying in a hotel in the center, and it's just a few streets away. You retrace your steps, wandering through the cool shade of the back streets until you reach the hotel. Your room is located on the top floor. It's small but comfortable and decorated with beautiful patterns and fabrics. The curtains look like something from a Medici palace, a creamy velvet with intricate floral designs in varying shades of red. This design must be intentional, you think, as a tribute to Florence's history and its famous textile industry. But there's something else that makes this hotel room so special. You wanted a room with a view, and here it is. Drawing back the curtains, you open the door and step onto the balcony. Right in front of you, rising up from a sea of terracotta rooftops, is the Duomo, the iconic dome of the cathedral. This vast structure is made of orange-red bricks and is adorned with an ornate lantern made from white marble. And at the very top is a bronze ball and cross. It's the final decorative flourish, like the cherry on the cake. The extraordinary building is the symbol of Florence, and it also represents the spirit of the Renaissance. You remember reading about the construction of the dome, which was designed by Brunelleschi. Building work on the Florence Cathedral had begun in the year 1296, but more than a century later, it remained unfinished. In 1418, the city decided that it was time to find an architect who was up to the challenge of designing a huge, self-supporting dome. There was disagreement about how it should be done and who should get the commission. Brunelleschi was a local goldsmith who'd never built anything, but he had a vision for the dome, and he also had the support of the Medici family. And according to legend, Brunelleschi found an unusual way to convince the panel of commissioners. During the meeting, he suggested that the project should go to the architect who could make an egg stay upright, standing on its end. An egg was passed around the table from person to person, but of course, no one could make the egg stay upright. Each time, it rolled over. When it was Brunelleschi's turn, he took the egg and tapped it against the table, breaking the shell. The egg stayed upright, and he got the commission. Whether or not the story is true, there's no doubt that Brunelleschi was an amazingly innovative architect. The dome is an incredible feat of engineering, consisting of more than 4 million bricks. Even today, it's the world's largest brick and mortar dome. As you stand on the balcony, admiring the magnificent building in front of you, you think of the story of the egg and smile. Just like Michelangelo, who saw the angel in the marble, Brunelleschi also saw something extraordinary in the everyday. Perhaps this was something that the Renaissance geniuses of Florence all had in common. You're feeling thirsty after your long walk, so you head inside the room and pour yourself a glass of mineral water from the fridge. Then you go back onto the balcony and sit down in the comfortable lounge chair. As you sip the cool water, feeling relaxed and refreshed, you continue to gaze at the beautiful dome. In the golden light of late afternoon, it reminds you of the setting sun. Everything about this place is so perfect, you think. The view of the dome and the surrounding rooftops. The evocative, high-pitched calls of the swifts as they soar through the sky. And the scent of jasmine from a nearby terrace. Breathing in, you savor this rich, perfumed fragrance. At this time of day, with evening approaching, the scent of jasmine somehow seems stronger, more intense. Or perhaps you're just more aware of it than before. Your senses heightened after a day immersed in the beauty of Florence. Whatever the reason, you find yourself relishing the scent now. You continue to slowly breathe in and out, gazing at the dome. The red bricks seem to merge into the soft golden light glowing at the edges. As you watch the light gradually fade, you treasure every moment. Sitting here on the balcony, you feel so fortunate. You've had a wonderful day in Florence, and now you can rest here for as long as you like, simply enjoying the view. Florence is a wonderful sight, isn't it? I can tell the worries of your day-to-day world are completely gone here. It seems you were so relaxed that you fell asleep, and I didn't want to wake you. You deserved a good rest after all. But now, with the warm Italian sun shining on a fresh new day, it's time to carry on with our journey. Today, we'll begin by exploring Florence a little further on a pleasant morning in the city, before heading out into the surrounding region of Tuscany. I can't wait to show you the majestic, rolling Tuscan countryside. So, let's get started. It's a beautiful, warm, sunny morning in the Tuscan capital, Florence. The streets are already busy with locals making their way to work. Eager sightseers are out already, beating the long queues for museums, galleries, and the city's trademark piece of architecture, Il Duomo, the Cathedral of Florence. The smell of newly baked bread and pastries wafts through the air, complemented by the distinguishable scent of freshly brewed coffee. As you take a stroll around the pedestrianised paths of the city, local business owners setting up for the day invariably greet you with a smile and a pleasant cry of ciao. Running through Florence is the River Arno. It is perfectly aligned due east to due west, and this means that should you stand on one of several bridges in central Florence, you can watch the sun both rise and set, both of which create a beautiful shimmer on the slow, gentle stream of water. As you watch from the Golden Bridge, you see small cargo boats, canoes, kayaks, even gondolas, floating along at a relaxed pace. Like you, they are soaking in the goodness of the morning sun. Firenze, as the locals would call it, is a historical city, famed for its incredible sculptures and artwork from Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and more. You could spend days here exploring, learning, and absorbing yourself in the culture. However, this is a splendid day for escaping the bustling streets of the Tuscan capital. Along a quiet side road, you hop in your rented hatchback car and begin the drive out into the countryside. Within half an hour, you're surrounded by greenery, dry grasslands, forestry, and a vast number of olive gardens. With the windows rolled down, you feel the warm breeze running through your hair. Clear, unpolluted air fills your lungs. You hear nothing but the hum of the car engine and the pleasant sound of birdsong in the passing treetops. The tarmac below your tires is a baked dull grey, showing scars from decades of service. And as you ascend the country lanes, you are met with frequent hairpin bends to navigate. Thankfully, the roads are quiet and it's a great joy to drive these weathered routes. For a little while, the road is surrounded by large trees, slightly leaning in at their peaks. They create a tunnel-like effect as you pass through, and the shaded road continues to climb a steady gradient. Suddenly, the trees clear to one side and the sun glares in once more. The views are astonishing. Rolling hills of pure green, set beneath a hazy blue sky. Nature's artwork all around, as far as the eye can see. Within 100 meters or so, you pull into a small lay-by. There is a perfectly situated bench that acts as a viewpoint for its appreciative audience. You use your eyes like a camera lens, capturing blissful and vivid memories. Just below the hillside are a series of olive trees. Their unmistakable scent hits your nostrils before your eyes have even spotted the source. In various directions, there are small properties, barns and other buildings dotted about, with narrow, dusty roads leading to them. Further beyond, halfway up another tall hill, you catch sight of a small but majestic castle. The fortress looks to be in good condition, flaunting exquisite corner towers and no signs of damage to the outer structure. Perhaps, you ponder, it may still be in use to this day. This prompts you to return to your car and set off on a quest to find the castle. Driving slowly and steadily through this Chianti region, the warm breeze continues to flow in through the car windows. The steering wheel feels warm in your hands as you circle it right and left, right and left. The winding road continues to snake through the exquisite landscape. After a while, you spot a left-hand turn with signs for a couple of nearby villages. At the foot of this signpost is a small wooden pointer with a castle pictured on it. You of course take the turn up the narrow path and begin the gradual climb up another large hill. As you drive along, hundreds of rows of vines surround the road on either side, boasting endless bunches of plush grapes, red and green, almost ready for picking in the approaching harvest season. A couple of kilometers later, you pass through a small village called Santa Brigida. There there isn't much of note here, just a few shops, bars and restaurants. Some locals are sat outside, taking in the warm sun and enjoying their mid-morning espresso coffees. With little in the way of road signs here, you decide to pull over and politely ask an elderly couple for directions. In your best Italian, you say, "Direzione di Castello, per favore." They smile and instantly identify your native tongue. Thankfully, they can speak a little themselves. Yes, the castle is a few kilometers further. You will see signs to your right where you must go to find it. With thanks, you depart the small village and continue onwards towards the castle. As promised, you see the signpost to the road on the right, labelled Castello del Trebbio. Here, the roads are again encompassed by many acres of vineyards on both sides. Eventually, you spot the castle in all its glory. It is a beautifully maintained 12th century building. Thick stone brick walls and a large wooden entrance gate that is open. As you crawl past, still in your car, you see a number of visitors in the small courtyard inside. It's at this point that you realize the castle is home to an operating winery. The public can take tours of the fortress to learn about its history and its wines. Parking up, you proceed into the shaded courtyard. The aroma of pressed grapes hits your nostrils instantly, accompanied by the scent of many colourful flowers dotted around the castle walls. The temperature becomes a little more comfortable as you're shielded from the sun. Standing at the rear of the courtyard, the tour guide invites you to join the other guests for a look around the fortress. First, you are taken down a straight staircase to the cellars. Here, the temperature is even cooler, a welcome respite from the ground level heat. The cellars are filled with large wooden barrels, each comprising of different varieties of Trebbio wines. The tour guide explains how the wine remains in these barrels for set amounts of time. This allows the wine to mature and stabilize, evolving the flavors to perfection. The scent permeates the cool air, and you can almost taste it with just your sense of smell. From here, you are guided up to a higher level in which hundreds of bottles of wine are positioned in stands. They are intentionally leaned slightly downwards kept in this position for a short time to finalize the blending of ingredients. After half an hour or so of touring the winery, the guide invites you into the castle quarters. They are still occupied to this day by a family that has owned the property since the mid-1900s. Fireplaces in every room, high ceilings, lavish rugs, historical paintings. Everything in keeping with old traditions. After a tour of the home, you are invited back out to the courtyard. Wine tasting and complimentary snacks are offered. In turns, the tour guide pours small measures of red, white and dessert wines into your glass. With your nose pressed to the rim of the glass, you inhale deeply, identifying the woody, nutty scent of the red, the fruity, crisp tones of the white, and the sweet, overripe aroma of the dessert wine. As you sip away, enjoying the relaxed atmosphere in the Tuscan castle, a sense of complete peace and joy fills you within. By chance, you spotted the castle in a scenic view over the rolling hills. Now, just a matter of hours later, here you are sharing an enchanting, authentic experience with other happy visitors. The tour ends in the early hours of the afternoon, and you decide to take a stroll up a quiet lane. In the trees, the sounds of birds hard at work finding food and communicating with one another. The baked, earthy path scuffs under your feet as you ease along at a casual, relaxed pace. There are 3 or 4 small houses here and there. A couple of friendly dogs trot out to greet you as their owner sits on his porch and waves fondly from his deck chair. The afternoon is closing out by the time you return to your car. Your legs are feeling a little fatigued, your stomach beginning to groan. Setting off once more, you head back in the direction of Florence. On your way, you pass a small pizzeria, set against yet another impressive backdrop. Feeling ready for refreshment, this restaurant seems like a perfect end to your Tuscan day trip. Walking through the entrance, the appetizing smell of pizza dough crisping in a wood fire oven is instantaneous. The staff welcome you and sit you down on a balcony table overlooking the vineyards. You are served excellent food and drink, alleviating your hunger and quenching your thirst.
You take time to just sit and relax as the sun sets over the deep green hills. A few large birds continue to hover above the land. Gradually, the familiar sound of crickets fades in across the dimming landscape. Around you, other customers are also enjoying the sights and sounds, the cool breeze, the calm atmosphere. It doesn't faze you to be sitting on your own. In fact, it provides time to reflect and simply enjoy your own company. Sometimes exploring alone can be a deeply satisfying experience. By the time you return to your apartment in Florence, you are feeling as sleepy and peaceful. You lay down on your comfortable bed. Your tired body sinks into the mattress as your eyes close and your mind quietens. Slowly, you drift into a cozy, deep sleep. Picturesque scenery from your day in the country fill your dreams with bliss. Memories of a tranquil Tuscan adventure that will stay with you forever.
I could explore Tuscany forever, couldn't you? I don't think the beauty here would ever get old. But now it's a new day, and it's time to carry on with our train journey across Italy. Today, we're making our way to Rome, the heart of the ancient world. It's usually a few hours by train, but thankfully, the conductor of the Dreamland train is a good friend of mine, so we'll be there in just a moment's time. Once we arrive, we'll explore the streets of the historic centre during the blue hour, that magical time of twilight when the sky is a deep, luminous shade of blue. It's the perfect time to explore the history and beauty of the Eternal City. I can see the Roman train station now. Travelling in Dreamland truly is the best experience. Let's exit the train and begin the next leg of our Italian adventure. You're sitting in a cafe in the historic centre of Rome. It's late afternoon in early summer. Although you're inside the cafe, in a way, you're outdoors too. The tall window opens right onto the street, and your table touches the grey cobbles of the piazza. This small square is one of the most beautiful in the city. It's tucked away in the heart of the ancient quarter, and it feels like a tranquil refuge from the hustle and bustle of the nearby shopping streets. In the middle of the piazza is a gorgeous Renaissance fountain. As you sit in the cafe, slowly sipping a cool drink, you admire the details. You notice how the fading sunlight sparkles on the flowing water and illuminates the limbs of the bronze boys, 4 smiling statues that decorate the fountain. Each boy has an arm raised, with a hand reaching out to catch a bronze turtle falling from a basin above. The boys rest their feet on a dolphin, which pours water into a shell and then into the wide basin below. It's such an unusual, imaginative fountain, a true work of art. Your gaze drifts from the sculptures to the smiling faces of the passers-by who've stopped to admire it. For tourists and locals alike, this is a special place. You take another sip of your drink, relishing each refreshing mouthful, and glance down at your guidebook on the table. There's a short section on the fountain and the intriguing Roman legend about its origins. According to the story, a young man fell in love with the daughter of a wealthy older man who lived in this square. The young couple wanted to marry, but first the man had to convince his potential father-in-law it was a good idea. So, in the middle of the night, the young man arranged for the turtle fountain to be constructed at the center of the square. When the father opened the shutters of his bedroom window the next morning and looked out, he was astonished to see it had appeared overnight. He was so impressed that he allowed the wedding to go ahead. The young couple soon got married, and 500 years later, this bronze symbol of love and imagination is still standing and capturing the hearts of passers-by. Looking up from the book, you see the fountain in front of you with a renewed appreciation. Although the legend is probably no more than a fantasy, it's still inspiring. If nothing else, it's a sign of the monument's importance in the neighborhood. The locals were so moved by its beauty that they dreamed up a story to explain its appearance. Sitting here, listening to the trickling water is so relaxing that you could happily stay for the rest of the day. But glancing around the square, you notice the light fading, slowly softening. It's the beginning of the blue hour, the perfect time for a stroll around the streets of Rome. The blue hour is a phenomenon that happens across the world. When the sun dips below the horizon, the indirect sunlight is transformed into a beautiful shade of blue. This moment is particularly spellbinding in the historic centre of Rome. you notice the contrast with the golden lamplight against the darkening streets, which creates little shining pools on the cobblestones. Some details seem to fade away in the encroaching darkness, while anything that contrasts with the sky becomes more defined. Against the deep blue backdrop, the towers, domes, and rooftop gardens are clearly visible. Even from street level, in these narrow, winding alleys, you can always catch a glimpse of the skyline. It's a magical twilight world, tantalizingly close, yet just out of reach. You're also aware of the swifts, which dive and spiral high above the rooftops. These birds spend the winter in Africa before returning to Rome for the spring and summer. Judging by their aerobatic displays and joyous cries, they seem to be celebrating their homecoming. Wherever you go at this hour, you can hear their ecstatic song echoing through the city. As you stroll through the back streets, you admire the beautiful old buildings, patterned by time. In the daylight, they're mostly shades of red, orange, and pink, the colours of sunset. But once the sun goes down and the blue hour begins, even the walls of the buildings seem to magically change colour, turning blue, silver, or black. Some of the oldest buildings in the neighbourhood were constructed many centuries ago. You can even find the remains of an ancient Roman fish market beneath a crumbling archway nearby. But what interests you most are the apartment blocks that line the narrow street. It's incredible to think that they've been inhabited for hundreds of years, home to countless generations of Roman families. Hearing voices above you, you look up and see an old man lean out the window to pull the shutters closed. There's something comforting about this mundane little ritual, signalling the arrival of the dark and the end of the working day. You imagine the man in his kitchen now, beginning to prepare the evening meal. Perhaps he's making a traditional Jewish Roman dish, something characteristic of the neighbourhood. Deep-fried artichoke or savoury treats with zucchini flowers and mozzarella. Breathing in deeply, you can smell the aroma of garlic and vegetables sizzling in a pan. It's a nice image, the man closing the shutters and then bustling around his kitchen. But you're happy to be outside, exploring the streets and breathing in the fragrant air, the mingling scents of food and flowers. Something else that strikes you about the buildings in this neighbourhood is their multi-textured facades. Layers of paint flake away, revealing remnants of signs, love messages, and lines of poetry written on the walls. These buildings are so old and have rarely received a fresh coat of paint or plaster. The result is a cracked, colourful surface with countless layers. The walls may be flawed, but they create a sense of character and history that's far more interesting than perfection. And then there are the buildings that have been assembled from ruins. As you walk through these streets, you sometimes notice a decorative detail embedded in the wall. The head of a sculpture, or even an entire Roman column emerging. These unusual architectural details are known as spolia, from the Latin word meaning spoils. In the past, builders would often use parts of old buildings in new construction, which is why you find fragments of ancient temples peeking out of the walls of a home. During the medieval and Renaissance periods, this practice was particularly widespread. Even some of the most recognizable landmarks you find in Rome today could have been taken apart without a second thought. For example, it was only the conversion of the Pantheon from a pagan temple to a Christian church that prevented it from being plundered. Today, despite being 2,000 years old, the Pantheon remains more or less intact. On your walk through the neighbourhood, you stop to admire the Roman remains displayed on the wall of a building on the corner, running your fingers over the cool marble. While the idea of recycling ruins may seem strange to us now, at least these beautiful fragments have been preserved. Rome is like a large, open-air museum with overlapping layers of history. There's something to discover on every street, from a colourful fresco to a plaque commemorating a famous person or event. The past surrounds you, ready to be discovered by anyone who happens to pass by. You could spend the whole night exploring these alleyways, taking your time moving from one corner to the next. Slowly, your gaze drifts up from the walls to the sky. The streets in the centre resemble a winding labyrinth, but all it takes is a glimpse of the deep blue overhead to feel a sense of peace and scale. Looking up, you forget for a moment that you're in the heart of the city. You could be in the countryside, in the middle of boundless space. You sense this change in atmosphere even more intensely during the blue hour. It's as if the city is taking a deep breath and winding down for the evening. You continue to look up at the rooftops, reflecting on how the low skyline creates a sense of openness. In the historic centre, it's rare to find a building more than 3 or 4 stories high. There's a rule that no building here can exceed the height of St. Peter's Basilica, the Renaissance church in the heart of the Vatican City. Walking through the centre of Rome, it strikes you that everything seems to be built on a very human scale. Despite the astonishing beauty and history of this city, It feels relatable and lived in. The vast number of piazzas adds to the impression of space and airiness. Every winding street eventually leads to one of these hubs of neighbourhood life. But there are few quite as striking as the one you find yourself in now. Following your instinct has led you to Piazza Navona, perhaps the most beautiful square in all of Rome. One side of the large, oval-shaped space is lined by restaurants and bars, with tables spilling out into the centre. On the other side stands a breathtaking 17th century Baroque church. The white marble has a silvery shine at this time of the evening. You see the outline of a crescent moon. The gradual, dreamy transition from dusk to night is almost complete. You wander across the square, listening to the murmur of voices in the restaurants, a blend of Italian, English, and other melodious languages drifting towards you. You can't quite make out the words, but the sound is soothing. The mix of languages makes sense, as this square is a meeting point for both Romans and tourists. It's where locals come for their evening passeggiata, or aimless stroll. Lovers walk hand in hand, children run and play, and visitors chatter happily while soaking up the atmosphere. Despite all the people coming and going, Piazza Navona retains its tranquil ambience, in part perhaps because of its many fountains. They stand at each end of the square, and there is a huge, majestic one right in the middle, opposite a church. You walk up to this beautiful central fountain to get a closer look. When you're standing next to it, all the other sounds of the square disappear. All you can hear is the flow of the water gushing into the serene, turquoise pool in the basin below. This magnificent monument is known as the Fountain of the Four Rivers, and was designed in 1651 by the artist Bernini. The impressive statues at each side represent the gods of four major rivers, but the grandeur of the fountain is almost overshadowed by the Egyptian obelisk at its centre, an imposing pillar that surges up into the deep blue sky. From where you're standing, it looks as though it could almost touch the crescent moon coming into focus above you. You decide to sit down on a marble bench nearby. When you close your eyes, the sound of rushing water seems to intensify, resembling a waterfall rather than a fountain. The further you explore, the more you discover that Rome is full of these magical illusions, where one thing seems to transform into another. With the slightest movement or change in light, the scene before you seems to shift. This city of stone often has a transient, dreamlike quality. One example of the city's illusions is a little-known street high on a hill overlooking the Vatican. It opens up at the end to reveal a perfect panorama and a view of the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. But as you get closer, the dome appears smaller, as though it's receding into the distance. And when you move away, the dome seems to be moving towards you, growing bigger and bigger. This effect is particularly mesmerizing after dark. On another evening, perhaps you'll cross the river and discover this beautiful optical illusion for yourself. You'd like to understand how it works. Some say the changing dome is a trick of perspective created by height and distance, amplified by the wide terrace at the end of the road. One day, perhaps you'll find the answer. But for now, you're quite happy to continue walking through the city centre. Feeling rested, you stand up from the bench and move on slowly. But before you leave the square, you turn back for one last look. When your eyes were closed, the blue hour transformed into night. The sky is now black, streaked with soft grey clouds. The moon has risen fully and now shines high above the obelisk, bathing the square in a silver light. Beneath this perfect night sky, the buildings and monuments look somehow unreal, like the backdrop on a stage. It could be the setting for a play or an opera. For a moment, you might also believe that there's nothing on the other side of the walls. It's only an illusion, like so much else here in the Eternal City. But the beauty of Rome is that there's always something else to discover, beyond every wall and around every corner. There's part of you that wants to walk on and on, learning everything there is to know about this enchanting place. For a little while, you allow yourself to get pleasantly lost in the back streets. Wherever you walk, it feels like you're stepping into the past. This neighbourhood has hardly changed at all throughout the centuries. When you look up, you notice a few windows with open shutters and catch occasional glimpses of ceilings with old wooden beams and ornate painted frescoes. While the shops are closed at this time, it's fascinating to peer into their darkened windows. You never know what you might see. Perhaps a collection of intriguing antiques, or an artist's studio with unfinished sculptures. Some of these shops resemble miniature museums. Gazing through the glass, your mind begins to wander. You find yourself daydreaming, imagining the stories behind each object. Whether a marble statue or a tiny glass bottle, are they as ancient as they look? When you reach the corner of the street, you pause for a moment, enjoying the sense of peace and serenity. This area is busy during the day, but now you're one of just a few strolling along and enjoying the calm atmosphere. Across from where you're standing, you notice a wide space between the buildings, revealing an open stretch of dark sky and some lights twinkling in the distance. Suddenly finding this gap in the skyline can mean only one thing: you're near the river. You cross the street, then the next, and pause beneath a row of verdant plane trees that overlook the Tiber River. You lean against the low wall and gaze down at the waterway. It flows far below you, moving at a slow, dreamy pace. The Tiber is not quite what you would expect from the central river in a capital city. The water moves lazily, and there are no boats, just the occasional bird bobbing on the surface. It seems like something you might find in the tranquil countryside. Looking to your left, you see something quite unexpected. An island in the middle of the river. Its size and curved shape make you think of a ship, and for a moment, it seems to be moving towards you. Then you look again, more closely this time, and realize it's another illusion. The top part of the island is thick with umbrella pine trees, which sway and dance in the evening breeze. In the moonlight, the movement of the boughs makes it look as though the whole island is slowly drifting down the river. Tiber Island is a beautiful place, a sanctuary of peace and quiet in the city centre. On the western edge is a hospital dating back to the 16th century, but the island's associations with medicine can be traced back even further, as far as the 3rd century BCE. According to legend, a group of Romans took a snake from a temple in Greece. On their return to Rome, while they were sailing their ship up the river, the animal slithered off and disappeared into the vegetation of Tiber Island. The people interpreted this as an omen and decided to build a temple to the god of healing. A stone bridge connects the banks where you're standing to the island. Built in 62 BCE, it's the oldest Roman bridge still in use in the city. As you walk towards it, planning to cross, you become even more convinced of the island's resemblance to a ship. This is no coincidence, and it stems back to the same tale. The legend of the ship and the snake was so popular with the people of Rome that they created a curved stone outline around the island to make it look even more like a boat. There's an obelisk in its main square, resembling a mast, and while it's not visible from this distance in the dark, if you look closely in daylight, you can even spot a carving on the wall, a depiction of the sacred snake. Although you're the only person crossing the bridge at this particular moment, you're not quite alone. On each stone parapet stands an enigmatic statue with 4 heads, watching over the river. These statues are representations of Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, transitions, and passages. In mythology, Janus was the father of Tiberinus, the god of the river. It's as though a father is watching over his son through the centuries and the changing seasons. You'd like to learn more about this intriguing island and explore it in depth, but you're beginning to feel sleepy. You decide to walk just a little further and find a place to sit and rest for a while. You cross through another moonlit piazza and continue until you find a flight of stone stairs leading down the side of the island. You begin to descend, taking them one by one. With every step, the noise of the city fades further away, replaced by the rushing water. The river flows faster here, propelled by a kind of waterfall next to the island. Soon, all you can hear is its perpetual flow and the occasional cry of a seagull. It's as though you're moving into another world by the water's edge. When you reach the bottom step, you take in a deep breath and catch the unmistakable scent of the river. Cool, fresh, and earthy. There are a few other visitors nearby who have also come to appreciate the Tiber at water level. Looking around, you notice that there are a handful of deck chairs scattered along the stone walkway. It's the perfect place to sit quietly and take in the atmosphere. You wander over to the nearest chair and sit down. It feels so good to rest your feet after your long walk. You close your eyes. You've seen so much this evening that you no longer feel the need to look. It's enough to just sit here by the river's edge, breathing in and out, and relaxing. Images of your journey move through your mind. Colours and fountains. The swifts soaring above the rooftops. The moonlight spilling over the cobblestones. But these beautiful memories slowly begin to drift away as your sleepiness takes over. You let go, allowing the images to fade and disappear. Soon, you're aware of nothing but the rushing water and your calm breaths, leading you gradually into sleep. I see you've drifted off, but not to worry. There's no need to disrupt your state of relaxation. The next and final stop on our journey is just a short distance to the coast from here. We're already travelling there now. I took the liberty to bring the Dreamland train to you. It's one of the benefits of sleepy travel like this. It requires very little effort. We've almost arrived at our final destination. In a moment, you'll be on a picturesque Mediterranean terrace with a view of the sea. To be frank, not much will happen. You'll simply relax and enjoy a quiet evening. You deserve it after all the travel we've done. This is the perfect way to get your mind set right for a good night's rest. I invite you to look up. There's a breathtaking Italian sky above. Just watch as the soft white clouds float across the bright blue sky, drifting further and further away. Some of the clouds become smaller, dissolving as they drift. You'll spend the rest of our evening beneath a beautiful sky just like this, along the coast of the Mediterranean, where the clear blue waters act as a mirror. And by the time night falls, all of those clouds will be whisked away, leaving your mind as clear as the night sky. So, here we are at your private Mediterranean escape. Why don't you go in? Make yourself comfortable and enjoy the view from the terrace. You've been relaxing in a deck chair on a rooftop terrace for a while now, reclined and watching the clouds come and go. You're starting to feel pleasantly tired. Perhaps it might be nice to walk around the terrace and admire the view, you think. Slowly raising yourself out of the deck chair, you stretch your arms and legs. Your whole body is relaxed, and your skin has been gently warmed by the afternoon sun. It's the perfect outdoor atmosphere, a soft, golden sun that warms without burning, and a blissful sea breeze. The breeze that carries the clouds away comes back every now and then as a sudden gust of wind. It blows through your hair and ripples your clothes. You walk around a row of potted plants to the nearest edge of the terrace and lean on the wall to see what's below. From this side, you can see the private courtyard, a paved square with a small garden and fountain in the middle of the building. Although you're high up, you can just make out the soft trickle of the fountain below. At this time of day, there aren't many people about. You see a dog trot across the courtyard, wagging his tail. He jumps up and puts his paws against the edge of the fountain, but he's too small to reach. Then you spot his owner, slowly following his pup across the courtyard. The old man picks up the dog and holds him to the stream of water flowing from the fountain. The dog laps it up gratefully, gulping down the cold water for what feels like a long, long time. Eventually, the old man lowers him to the ground, and the two walk off into the shade and disappear from view. There aren't many other signs of life in the courtyard, but looking carefully, you catch sight of a couple of other inhabitants. There's a girl sitting in the shade of the palm trees, cross-legged on the grass. You can just about see the white paper in her lap. You watch her hand moving up and down over the paper. Is she writing or drawing? It's hard to tell from up here. You imagine her writing a story, or perhaps sketching the fountain in the courtyard. Whatever she's doing, she's found the perfect shaded spot. Most of the windows around the courtyard have their shutters closed, but you hear the distant squeak of a shutter opening and see a head emerge from a window on the second floor, just above where the girl is sitting. Although you can't hear what they're saying, you can hear the muffled voice of the woman talking to the girl on the grass. They continue the conversation as the woman hangs out her washing to dry. There's a short washing line beneath her window. You watch her shake each item of clothing to smooth it, then position it carefully on the line and peg it in place. There's something soothing about watching domestic scenes like this. The repetitive yet calming routine of hanging out the washing. It seems to happen in slow motion. You continue watching until the woman finishes and disappears inside the apartment. The girl goes back to writing or drawing, and the courtyard is quiet once again. Nothing but the trickle of the fountain and a few cicadas in the trees. Looking above the courtyard and the roof of the building, you can see many other buildings. So many windows too. From where you're standing, it's difficult to make out exactly where one building ends and another begins. They all seem to be layered, one on top of the other. To distinguish them from one another, you have to look carefully at the colours. While all the buildings here have a similar colour scheme, there are subtle differences. Burnt orange, russet red, terracotta, cherry blossom, peach pink, golden yellow like the sun. The colours of the Mediterranean. You look across the rooftops to neighbouring terraces. There are clean white sheets hung out to dry, blowing in the wind like the sails of a ship. On another terrace filled with potted plants, a group of young friends are talking as they eat and share a bottle of wine. Is it a late lunch or an early dinner? You wonder. When you're on the terrace, it's easy to lose track of time. A seagull caws from above. You look up and see it drifting through the air, carried effortlessly by the breeze. You follow its path, which leads you to the other side of the terrace and the sea. As you cross the terrace, you feel the breeze blow through your clothes, and with it, the slightest hint of salt. Perhaps it's just your imagination, but you can almost smell the sea, mingled with the jasmine from the neighbour's trellis. On the opposite side of the terrace, beyond further rows of buildings and balconies, there's a thin line of palm trees, and above their green leaves, the shimmering expanse of the sea. It looks so calm and stagnant from here. It's almost completely still, more like a lake than an ocean. But you know that's a mirage. If you look closely, you can barely see the white crests of the waves as they roll towards the beach. It's the glimmer of the sunlight that gives them away. At this hour, the sea is emerald green. As the day fades into dusk, the water will become darker, transforming into a deep blue, then purple, until it's almost black. You could stand here forever, just watching the sea and the gradual shift of colours, from one shade to another. You close your eyes and breathe in deeply. This time, you're sure it's not just your imagination. It's the sea breeze, carrying the scent of the waves over the roofs and cascading hills, all the way to your terrace. The breeze is so fresh and bracing. For a brief moment, the tingle of goosebumps rolls down your spine. You open your eyes and step out of the shade into the sunlight. In just a few seconds, you feel your body warm up, all the way through. It really is the perfect temperature. That's enough standing for now, you think. The reclined chair is calling you back to its embrace. You walk back across the terrace to the deck chair and sit down, making yourself comfortable. You slip off your shoes, close your eyes, and tilt your face up slightly towards the soft warmth of the fading sun. You can feel the gentle, tingling heat caress your skin, along with a soothing breath of wind somewhere in the distance, you can hear the cry of seagulls. Soon, you're aware of nothing but your breaths, in and out. Your chest slowly rising and falling, like the crests of the waves on the emerald sea. Your thoughts fade as you fall into a daydream. You imagine floating in the waters of the Mediterranean, feeling the sensation of cool water on one half of your body, while the sun warms the other half. A little while later, you slowly open your eyes. You have no idea what time it is, but quite simply, it doesn't matter. There's nothing you have to do, nowhere you have to be. You can sit in the chair for the rest of the day and all through the night if you like. Relaxing, dreaming. You can hear the sound of water. It's too loud to be the fountain in the courtyard. It's more like a hose or sprinkler. You press yourself up and lean forward to look for the source of the sound. Your ears lead your eyes to a neighbouring balcony. It's one of the more elegant balconies in the building, both by construction and decoration. It stretches all the way around the top floor and is entirely lined with potted plants. A woman is watering them one by one with a hose, moving slowly along the balcony. There are so many plants, in pots of every possible shape and size. She's clearly in no hurry. She waits until each plant has had its share of water, then moves one step over to water the next one. There's a variety of plants on your terrace too. A lemon tree in a large pot in the corner, and various smaller plants and herbs scattered around the terrace. It's a good time of day to water the plants, when it's not too hot. Maybe you'll do the same. You go over to the lemon tree and touch the soil. It's a little dry. With nothing else to do, you might as well water all the plants. They deserve to be nice and cozy this evening too. You cross to the other side of the terrace, where a plastic watering can sits beneath a tap in the wall. You turn the rusty tap and wait while the watering can slowly fills, listening to the calming flow of water, a trickle and an echo that becomes gradually quieter. When the watering can is full, you pick it up and move towards the nearest plant. It's a small tree with fruit known as the loquat, or the Japanese medlar or plum. This attractive ornamental plant is native to Asia, and at this time of year, its soft orange fruit is ripe and ready to eat. You pick one and rinse it off beneath the tap. Then slowly take a bite, savouring the sensation. The sweet, juicy flavour bursts on your tongue. It has a delicate, perfumed taste, a little like a cross between a peach and a mango. On this warm afternoon, it's as refreshing as a cool glass of water. The loquat is grown throughout the world. In China, because of its golden colour, it represents wealth, luck, and prosperity. It has so many different uses, from traditional medicine in China to liqueurs in Italy. But this particular plant probably became popular on terraces for decorative purposes. It has gorgeous, textured foliage and lovely white flowers that give off a rich, aromatic scent. But it's the fruit itself that attracts your attention, with its beautiful shade of gold and delicious taste. After watering the loquat, you move methodically around the terrace, from plant to plant. Whenever you return to the tap to fill up the watering can, you pass a trellis covered with cascading jasmine. You close your eyes and breathe in deeply, letting its heady fragrance spread right through you. It seems hard to believe that a tiny flower can produce such a powerful scent. But then again, there are so many of them. The jasmine vine has created an amazing profusion of flowers this year. Although the heat of the afternoon has faded and the sky is no longer bright blue, it's not quite dusk yet. While refilling the watering can one more time, you look up and notice the faint sliver of a crescent moon. As you continue to water the plants slowly, almost meditatively, you wonder how the sky will have changed by the time you finish. You turn your attention to the row of small pots near the deck chair. They all contain herbs: basil, rosemary, parsley, mint, thyme, and sage. You sniff them one by one and press the leaves between your fingers. Perhaps you can use one of them later as an ingredient when you prepare dinner. A pasta dish sounds good. A sauce with tomato and basil, or salty cheese with zucchini and mint, or stuffed pasta with butter and sage. As you stroke the sage leaves, your mouth begins to water. More than any of the other herbs, this plant seems to have a magical quality. In ancient times, it was used to ward off evil, to increase fertility, and to heal people from a wide range of illnesses and injuries. The ancient Greeks and Romans cultivated it, while in the Middle Ages, monks used to grow it in the monastery gardens, along with rosemary and other medicinal herbs. You close your eyes to picture these scenes. A man roaming through fields in Greece, gathering wild sage, and a monk tending to a sage bush in a tranquil garden. There's something soothing about these images, and the idea of continuity, the same plant grown across the world through the centuries. The sage that you smell now has the same scent and taste as the sage that a doctor once used in ancient Greece to create a healing balm. You breathe in again and find yourself yawning. You still haven't quite woken up from your nap in the deck chair. Only a few plants remain to be watered. A pot with vibrant pink flowers, and finally, the lemon tree. There are a couple of succulents too, including an aloe, but they don't need much water. They can wait till next time. The orange floor tiles on the terrace are starting to look dirty. While you were watering the plants, some soil and petals scattered across the floor. As you're putting things in order, you might as well clean up. You pick up a broom and begin to slowly sweep the floor, section by section. It's surprisingly relaxing, moving back and forth across the terrace. Whenever you look up, you see that the sky has changed colour again, from light blue to deep blue, from deep blue to purple, and then from purple to a fiery orange. You lean the broom against the wall and move the deck chair so it's facing towards the sea and the sunset. You sit down to gaze at the sky and admire the spectacular, shifting colours. You could happily sit here for hours, just watching, without a single thought in your head. Just you and the sunset. But the sunset can't last forever. The radiance fades as the sun vanishes on the horizon. The sky is growing deeper and darker. Looking around the terrace, you see that the outlines of the plants are starting to blend with the darker backdrop. Soon, it will be too dark to see anything clearly on the terrace. You decide to light the lanterns positioned on the corner of each wall. You light the first lantern, then the second. As you walk slowly across the terrace, taking care not to trip over the plants, you sense something moving on the ground, near one of the pots. Just as you light the third lantern, a cat moves into the pool of light on the tiles. He makes a soft, meowing sound and nuzzles against your leg. You lean down to stroke him, running your fingers through his soft fur, and he lets out a relaxing purr. He's a plump, well-fed Siamese cat who belongs to a family in the building next door. He often explores the neighbouring terraces, especially at this time of day. He pads softly over the roof tiles, navigating the maze of chimneys and antennae until he reaches another terrace. This evening, he seems to have chosen your terrace and your company. You cradle the cat in your arms and wander back towards the deck chair There, you carefully sit down and slide back in the chair until you're comfortable. The cat settles down on your legs, purring contentedly. He acts as if he's known you his entire life. He's so at ease, curled up in your lap. At some point, you'll get up and gather some herbs to use in the kitchen. But right now, you're not particularly hungry or even thirsty. You're just pleasantly relaxed, and there doesn't seem to be a need to do anything else but enjoy it. You can sit a little longer on the terrace, listening to the peace and quiet, appreciating the sea breeze and the company of the cat. You become aware of distant music. It sounds like one of the neighbours is practicing the piano. A gentle, soothing melody that reminds you of a lullaby. Every now and then, the player stops, and then begins again, over and over. Maybe they're having a lesson, you wonder. The pleasant tinkering of the piano keys reverberates through the courtyard and floats across the terrace, past your ears and to the ocean. It seems to be soothing the cat too. He yawns and purrs sleepily. His eyes begin to drift between open and shut. He can barely stay awake, especially when you pet behind his ears. You can feel his body rising and falling ever so slightly with each quiet breath. Stroking the cat becomes almost hypnotic, an automatic movement. You rest your head back and look up at the sky. It's dark now and full of stars. There isn't a cloud in sight, and you haven't the slightest concern or worry in your mind. In fact, you wonder if you're even having thoughts, or if your mind is just lost in the present experience. As time passes, your mind empties completely. You're conscious of nothing except the night sky, bursting with silver stars, like a meadow of flowers, flowing on to infinity. The sleeping cat breathes in and out, in time with your own breaths. You're not sure what time it is, but eventually you find yourself falling asleep too. You'd better climb into bed, you think. You carefully slide the cat over. He barely lifts his head before curling back up into a ball on the chair. You walk inside and close the glass door to the terrace. You're looking forward to getting into your bed. You just washed and dried the sheets today. Pulling back the covers on your bed, you run your hand along the pillow. Crisp and clean, exactly as you expected. You lie down and tuck yourself in. At this point, you've been half asleep for quite some time, so it's not long before you drift into peaceful dreams. Well, that's the end of our Italian journey. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again soon for more sleepy adventures. Until then, buonanotte, good night.